Okay. So did everyone have a chance to review the final draft sent by Elena compared to the changes? I had a few things, Elena, that I think might have gotten missed unless my notes were incorrect.
You may have. Very honestly, I was working off of the initial minutes that hadn't been reviewed by you at that point. So I'm happy to make any changes. We can get that to you ASAP.
Yeah, I'll just say the three, and if the group disagrees, I took pretty detailed notes. So on this first page under type of complaint received, we had talked about this forms being filled out by the panel, and that the box they check might disagree with the box that the complainant checked. And so we were going to put a box that said, if recategorized from the box marked on the complaint form, please check here, so that it was clear that the committee had made a concerted effort to say, we disagree that this was discrimination. We actually think it's excessive force. Just so the internal documents are clear that they didn't just, and so they know they don't have to just check the box that the complainant checked. Once they read the details of it, they really get the decision as to what box gets checked on here. Did everyone have that same recollection? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The next one was just on the complaint form, and we just talked about under the summary of complaint, because it's a very small area, just saying attach additional pages if necessary, just so the complainant knows that they don't have to try to fit everything into that small area.
Hold on a second. It does say that. It says at the bottom, if more space is needed, please continue on a separate sheet of paper and attach to this form.
I don't see that. Can you scroll down, Sherry? Maybe I got the wrong. Oh, it didn't print on mine. Okay, perfect. And then the last one was on the policies and procedures under number 2.
Hold on, get to that. Number 2. Okay.
So my notes said that and it didn't say what these were going to be, but you were going to spell out the steps for not complete complaints here, so the committee knew what to do if they got a complaint that didn't have that just wasn't completely filled out, that they should send it back to the complainant. We didn't really get into the details there. You said that you would draft something up.
Yeah, and so I had a question for everybody, and the question is because I started to write. This is for the sheriff, so we've all agreed this is the policies and procedures we're going to follow with the sheriff. But it was unclear as to what we were going to do with the other ones. So for the sheriff's piece, I can say, you got to let me know. Would you like it to say that if it's incomplete, that the chair will reach out to the complainant to get more information? And if that's the case, we'll do it that way. Or, my only concern is if you send it back and say it's incomplete, we're not going to handle it. It leaves all of you kind of the people on the panel in a bad light.
I think the chair should reach out to the complainant and get whatever additional details are necessary. Maybe the complaint is so vague that they don't know if it's the sheriff's office or a different police agent. It might not. So I think the chair, and again, it's already documented in the policies that any phone conversations or communications the chair has is documented. So I think that would be appropriate. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels.
Okay.
Do others feel it would be appropriate for the chair to just reach out to the complainant?
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
Okay, I'll make that change, and then those will be completed.
That was all I had.
Okay.
All right. Hello, Sheriff.
Hello, Sheriff.
Hi, Sheriff. Everyone. My computer's a little slow today, so we're just booting up here. All right, I got everybody now. How's everybody doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
All right, we just got through agenda item 1. And before we get to agenda item 2, I did get a request from a few supervisors that they wanted to have a conversation with the sheriff and this committee. And so we're going to pause for just a minute on the agenda, and I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Cousin.
Yeah, we had some questions around, I have shoddy service, so I apologize. We had some questions around what the policy is for working with ICE when incarcerated individuals are being let go or in custody. We were just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the policy.
Sure, what would you like to know?
What the policy is and how it's being implemented and who is making sure that it's properly implemented, I guess.
Well, the proper implementation would be ultimately up to me. And I can read the policy for you. Policy 0101, Immigration Enforcement, effective 02/22 of 2021. Policy of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office has a welcoming and inclusive policy towards immigrants in Columbia County. Columbia County Sheriff's Office does not actively participate in immigration enforcement. Procedures: members of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office will refrain from asking about residency, place of birth, immigration status, and citizenship status, except when legally obligated or required for reporting purposes. B, members of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office are prohibited from sharing information regarding residency, place of birth, immigration status, and citizenship status with Immigration and Custom Enforcement, except where legally obligated. Members of Columbia County Sheriff's Office will not arrest, detain, or delay the release of an individual for civil immigration purposes and/or in response to civil administrative warrants. Members of Columbia County Sheriff's Office will confirm a judicial warrant is present prior to dispatching CCSO personnel. And lastly, members of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office will complete training to properly identify judicial warrants versus civil administrative warrants and detainers. End of policy.
Sheriff, excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but there's an F you're missing.
Yeah.
And that states when an individual is in the custody of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office as an incarcerated individual and has a warrant or detainer, members will contact that agency to verify if it's still active and if that agency wants said individual prior to the release of the incarcerated individual.
Yeah, that is a policy, portion of the policy that is not in effect as of yet. So
Okay, so that was sent to me. So then I'm unaware that it wasn't in effect or is in effect. So, okay, go ahead.
yeah, that was a draft, supervisor. That hasn't been instituted as of yet.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's what I had. So go ahead.
No, that's my mistake for getting that draft to you.
So if that's on the draft, I'm just curious because some of the mixed information that was given to us, we were at an action at the jail because there was information given to the public that the sheriff's office intended to release this individual to ICE custody. And one of the questions that we had is what policy was being followed. And it seems that F is the policy, the missing, information that from the policy we have. Somebody was given an instruction to follow maybe the draft policy. Is that something that you can speak to, or maybe there's some confusion in the department? Because we were told that it is policy for the captain to notify ICE of these individuals.
Well, firstly, Ms. Cousins, Supervisor Cousins, can I ask where you're getting your information from? Because it's clearly not factual.
We work with CCSM, who has been the leader in immigrant rights, and they're getting their information directly from speaking with members of your team.
Well, I would like to speak with them personally because I'm not sure which members of my team gave them this information, but we follow their policy. Our policy states that we will not contact based on their immigration status or their residency. There was no contact based on that. This was not any type of contact that was based solely off of running into an individual on the street who happened to be a non-resident. I believe the case we're talking about is the release of an individual. I don't think we really need to mention any names right now, but when this individual came into our facility, we were unaware that he had any type of hold or detainer or warrant on him. Through biometrics, fingerprints, we were contacted by a federal agency. We were contacted in the manner of a warrant being lodged in our facility. We made that agency aware that yes, in fact, he is here because fingerprints show he's been booked in. There's no denying he's here in our facility in the care and custody sheriff's office. So prior to his release at 9 a.m., he was the federal agency was here present and turned over on a warrant just like anyone else would be turned over on a warrant in a safe, secure manner.
Thanks for the context. Sheriff, can you clarify if the warrant was a judicial warrant? or an administrative warrant?
I can.
So in this case, which one was it?
In this case, it appears to be a administrative warrant with an administrative detainer.
Is it your policy to turn over people to immigration enforcement with an administrative warrant?
A federal agency arrives on our doorstep or any other agency arrives on our doorstep with a valid warrant, we turn them over in the most safe, secure manner possible. Instead of releasing them into the public where they now are handed over to an individual or individually or a agency, we try to do it in a safe, secure manner. So we do it in the same context as we would any warrant. This individual was due to be released at 9 a.m. The handover happened just prior to that time period.
Sheriff, if I could, because it seems this is where the discussion is leading.
I'm sorry,
Um,
Bill, I apologize, but Paul Chaika had his hand up.
Oh,
So if we could
yep,
go to
yep.
DA first, and then we have Gary
I'll put my
Graziano,
hand up.
and then Bill, we'll get to you third, okay?
I'll put my hand up though. So
Thank you.
Thank you,
So-
Yes,
Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, I've missed a couple meetings and asked others in my office to attend in my place. But I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question that should be directed to Ms. DeFeo Keen, but I'm wondering if the issue of standing has been resolved. I believe you may recall that I questioned in the past how it is that Board of Supervisors
remember the undersheriff came out and talked to me and said that they're no longer there, but they could tell me no more information. Like no more information was available. So this was just a couple days ago. This is Friday. Here I am on Tuesday, just sort of asking some follow-up questions.
Mr. Chamiz, are you going to be here tomorrow?
I can be tomorrow. Yeah.
I mean, I see that on social media that there's going to be an event here tomorrow evening. And I see that there are some individuals who are on this panel that are in favor of that so-called peaceful protest. And we welcome anyone who wants to exercise their freedom of speech, and we just want them to do it in a safe manner. But I don't feel it's appropriate that we have members of the Public Safety Committee in support of protests on social media. I think it just gives it a bad look. I think they should be, neutral on the matter and deal with facts, not allegations.
Bill?
I'm certainly looking forward to getting the facts of the matter.
I think thus far the facts have been presented, in my opinion, and speaking with legal counsel, there's been no violation of policy. We do everything in a safe, secure manner. My job as a sheriff is a keeper of the peace here in Columbia County. We want to make sure everything is done safe, not only for our citizens, but for the individuals who may or may not be in custody of the sheriff or of another law enforcement agency. That being said, we will continue to do what I feel is necessary and correct to make sure everyone is safe and secure. And that goes for people who are residents and non-residents.
Bill?
Yeah, thank you. Interesting discussion. So since I was going to ask my question, I have a couple other points to make. So, the first one is I think the conversation was leading towards whether the difference between the two warrants that were issued. It seemed that's where they were going. But as far as to the point that was made, should this be the forum? I actually don't think that this is, because we're a recommendation body. We don't have the authority. But to the question that the DA asked, in all due respect, Mr. DA, and I do respect you, but I disagree. The Board of Supervisors, not us, it really shouldn't have come here, but the Board of Supervisors absolutely has question authority over the sheriff. And if you go and you look in our bylaws, and I think some of you supervisors should re-brush up on that, they have investigatorial powers, anything that they control the budget of, and they do control the budget of the sheriff's office. So when you start looking at how monies are being spent and the process in which those monies are being used, and they are being used for the operation of the sheriff's office, it absolutely gives the Board of Supervisors the power to question the agencies that are using those funds. So if I were you or some of these supervisors, I'd go back and look at that. But this is not the proper forum for this particular incident.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hughes. And as a former supervisor, I respect your position, your experience, and your knowledge, but I agree with you as relates to the question of budget, but I respectfully disagree with you as relates to the authority of the Board of Supervisors to oversee or in any way supervise or question the discretionary operation of the sheriff of his agency.
All right, we're going to move to Dave, and then I think we should move along because we do have a long agenda, and I think that this conversation can certainly continue and should continue under Board of Supervisors, Public Safety, other committees. Dave, did you have something quick on the topic? You're muted.
Sorry. Yes, very quick. And I think this is not the right place for this issue, but at the same time, it feels like it's a really raw issue for a lot of folks. I certainly feel that myself. So I think as we move on, we should, try and remember that we're working on this mission together, the one that we're here gathered for today together. And if we can sort of refocus ourselves with a certain amount of respect and compassion for each other. I think the issue that did come up is a really difficult one for a lot of us citizens, maybe all. And I appreciate everybody's earnestness. And I hope that, we can be soothed and comforted by the fact that we're working together on this particular project, and that I hope, we're going to get the answers that all citizens and public servants really require, and the respect that each of us require. So that's just me throwing that out there, that I feel everybody's pain for sure.
Thank you, Dave. Very well said, and a good way to transition. I don't think this conversation is over, but just in this committee meeting, we're going to move back onto the agenda items. And I do hope that the sheriff and supervisors and others can continue a conversation outside of this meeting. So we did get the final draft kind of approved by this committee. As far as next steps for that, before the Board of Supervisors officially adopts the documents and the policies, do we think it makes sense, since we have a citizen review panel already established, to send it along to those committee members? Maybe they can have a meeting just to review it. There may be, we prefer the check mark over here versus here, or a question on the policy, or do we just want to get it to the board, have it approved, and then tell them that it's what they're working with? I would prefer to have their insight before we do the final adoption. How do others feel?
I think we should send it on the way it is. I think this committee's worked awfully hard at it, and I think that committee may have questions. It can be adjusted later on, but I do think we have to come to some sort of conclusion here. That's my sense. I think we have a group that's looked at it pretty extensively. So that would be my position. I understand your position, Tistria, but I think we need to get a final document. And, it's a living document. If they come back to us and say, hey, can we make a tweak here down the road? I don't see that as being an issue. So I'd like to hear from the rest of the committee.
I'd agree with that.
I'd agree with that too.
So would I.
Okay, so Rob, would it be possible to put this through public safety for approval at our next meeting, and then get it to full board in July and get it adopted?
Absolutely.
And then get it to the
Absolutely. Yep,
Okay.
totally. We'll put it on as an agenda item for sure.
Okay, and then the other agenda. Oh, Elena, go ahead.
Hi, just one question, and if it's a later on the agenda, I apologize. Excuse me, but we are going to revisit how you want to handle the other three departments later on at some point, and have that go to the board separately.
I do have a question for you with that, Elena. If
Sure.
they all signed on and yet they're not really participating, I'm not sure what we can do.
Well, I think the question becomes is you're in a different situation with those three agencies, because unlike the sheriff, who has the ability to determine whether he does or does not want to participate, these entities are governed by their governing bodies, and their governing bodies is determined to give this panel or the panel the ability to review complaints. So if the citizens review panel, were to receive a complaint from a citizen that was affected by one of these three agencies, logistically, it seems to me that this committee has the ability to investigate or to take steps to determine how they want to handle it, even if it means they forward to someplace else. But right now, we've only addressed with the sheriff, who has a different rights under the law. They're very unique rights.
So I was really hoping that somebody either from the police agencies, or I think we even reached out to those town supervisors to say, hey, your police agency is going to be, guided by this, but they're not participating, but nobody has. So at this point, I would say we create the exact same document for 4 agencies, wherever sheriff's office is written in, we swap it out with Philmont Police Department, and we send all 4 to be adopted, because we've given more than enough time for participation by the police departments, by the supervisors, who are the governing body over the police departments, and nobody has chosen to participate. So that's where I'm at, is like, I don't want to have 7 more meetings where we invite them and they don't show up. We got documents that we all agree to. These ones say sheriff's office on it. I think, Elena, it'd probably be relatively easy for you to do 3 more versions, that anytime it talks about the sheriff's office, it talks about the local police departments, and maybe where it talks about legal counsel for the county, it'll say legal counsel for the town or village. And again, that'll be on them to then decide what they do with those. That would be my take.
I think we get it approved as we were going through public safety, through the board. We make those changes on the documents, and then I'll reach out to the heads of those departments and hand off those documents and have a discussion. I think we have to move on. That's my sense. Bill?
Yeah, I was gonna say that look, there's been enough attempts made to reach out to those agencies, and when the policy came out, it was pretty clear that they could have done it on their own or they could have signed on. And because they knew it was going to be a lot of work, they chose to sign on, which means they should have been a part. And my point is, there are members on this committee that will follow up with state agencies like DCJS and some of the other state agencies to see what the recourse is if they don't participate. So hopefully they do, but we'll see.
Gary?
I have a similar question. To clarify, this program is mandated for those other agencies as well, correct? Mandated.
Yes, they signed on to the.
They chose to participate, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
The only question I have is because with those three agencies, do you want to add a sentence that directs the head of that agency to provide you some kind of notification of the resolution? The sheriff has the decision as to whether he does or does not want to do that, but do you want something that at least requires that agency to notify you when a complaint has been resolved, even if it is founded, unfounded, resolved?
I think
Nothing
we would
more than
need to, because part of the goal of this is to have data, right? So the sheriff's office, this committee now needs to come to public safety and give a report. But if we don't, we don't have anything from them. So
yeah,
I would say yes, upon resolution, please, notify the chair with.
Okay. All right. I'll
Yeah.
make those revisions and I'll add just to change it out for each of the three other agencies. And then I will also just add a line that they shall provide data at the conclusion.
Great. And then Rob, we can put all 4 versions through public safety. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Elena, for reminding us of that. And then the other agenda item was how do we get this out to the public? So once it gets through public safety, through full board, how do we let the public know that there's this process?
Well, I think we can talk to the chairman. Obviously, he does his chairman's corner. I mean, that could go out. We could put it on the website. I think there could be, several areas. I think you and I, Tistria, can speak with the chairman on that and figure out the best way to disseminate this information.
Okay. And I would personally love to see the forms at least all the town and village halls around the county, similar to what we talked about with the survey and other things.
Sure.
Any other suggestions from anyone on this committee of ways to get it out? We could put
You
it
can
in
include it-
buildings
you could
like.
in-
Oh, go ahead.
You can include it in the town newsletters. If some of you have newsletters, I can craft a flyer or something just to let people know where the link is to obtain the documents, whatever they need.
Yeah, that'd be
Maybe
great, because we have a bunch
various
of poster
websites.
locations in New Lebanon. We could put flyers up, just, hey, there's this new thing, in case you weren't aware. All right, great. Any other questions or suggestions on that? All right, Sherry sent out a survey, so myself and Dave and Bill agreed to work out a draft survey. Sherry, do you mind pulling this document up on the computer? Because it's a brand new. I highlighted in yellow. It's all going to be, I think, the same wording, but I couldn't think of the appropriate wording if we actually write. We want to be clear that it's not New York State Police. We don't want to get a bunch of complaints about the New York State Police because they are not on this survey. So how to word it? Do we just list the sheriff's department and the 3 other police agencies that this entails? Because it's not Hudson City, it's not state police. So that's the first question, is kind of getting.
I would be specific, Tistria, as to the departments that this pertain to. I think otherwise it's too vague.
So just list the other 3.
I would just list them clearly, highlight them. Gary, you have a question?
I was just going to add that HPD was not included in that, but you just clarified that.
Yeah, so I'll go back in and say Columbia County Sheriff's Department and/or and list the other 3. Okay. So now you can ignore all the yellow. So Dave actually did the draft on this, and then we reviewed it. We did look at some other surveys out there, and we did a lot of, kind of rate 1 to 10, 1 being not happy, dissatisfied, 10 being very satisfied, and then there was a couple yes or no. Sheriff, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe there's just a typo. It's the Columbia County Sheriff's Office. It's not a department.
Got it. Thank you.
Right, I should have remembered that. Thanks.
So do we want to go question by question, or has everyone had a chance to review the draft and we can just open it to any input or changes that people have?
Supervisor, the only concern I would have, and, I'm quite comfortable with, the work that my employees here are doing, the men and women of the sheriff's office are doing, and I have no concern that, they're out there doing, the best for the community. However, some of these individuals that, come in contact with law enforcement may not know the difference between the sheriff's office, the state police, and any other agency. They just know they had contact with, a law enforcement agency. So, you know, I don't know how we're gonna, deal with those individuals who are not certain which agency they've come in contact with on a traffic stop or a minor infraction that they may have just someone come up to the car and said, hey, you have a taillight out. So that would be the only concern that I would have.
So I wonder if at the top, in addition to saying, this is about the sheriffs and these four, we like in bold say, please do not fill this out. If, with New York State Police, like maybe put some disclaimers. I think Dave had his hand, then Bill, then DA Chaika.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I totally understand that. If a person isn't unsure, and if we're specifically naming which office and departments it refers to, we can also say, if you're unsure, please don't fill it out. I think that's okay. And the other thing is, a lot of times on these scales, they actually put Y or N for people to circle, or also, a scale 1 through 10. So I don't know if that's something that can be graphically done. I don't know if this is going to be online or on actual paper, but I was just thinking often that makes it more clear rather than making a person think, oh, I guess a 7, give them the numbers across the bottom so they can just circle one. I should have thought of that beforehand, but.
Bill?
Oh, sorry. To the sheriff's point, I totally get, this is prior to someone actually even getting to the form, the interaction that they have. But when you're doing surveys isn't really meant to be, 100% accurate. It's just impossible, no matter what survey you're doing. And this is why they always say you have a margin of error of X, Y, and Z. And so we probably should have, maybe a notation on that or saying that, because there's no way, you're right. Some people may think it is the state police or the Hudson police or what have you, and just say, okay, it's the sheriff's department. And you have that, so I do get what the sheriff is saying, but there's going to be a margin of error here.
DA?
Following up on Mr. Supervisor Hughes's comment, may I know the source of the direction that the Police Reform Implementation Committee is tasked with undertaking a survey? Where does that come from?
The story that was part of our original, the original group, not the implementation, but when we were going through the working group, that we would do a survey, and it was actually, when we said it, of the agencies, not specifically of the sheriff's department, but all the agencies that signed up to the forum.
History, can you answer that? I mean, that might have been prior to this latest group.
It was.
Yeah, it was, because I wasn't part of that.
Taking a survey is like polling. It's a very scientific and mathematical specific task. I don't know what good such a survey would be. So I'm very curious as to the source of that.
I wouldn't akin it to polling. It certainly is how you know, where you gauge public or even, you know, elected official opinion. And we talked about doing surveys for other departments as well. And when I say we, meaning the, you know, various agency people throughout the community. Um, it's a way to have to get a better pulse of public opinion. But I wouldn't akin it. I wouldn't. I'm sorry, sir. I wouldn't akin it to polling, because a lot of times when you're doing polling, you're doing it for a specific purpose of a political purpose, and this isn't that.
Can I
Well-
interrupt for one moment? The survey was in the final document under
Right.
community relations number 6. Community survey was in the actual plan that was developed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. Gary?
So when I think Bill made the comment that this survey was created prior to this board, was that prior to the board I'm on? Is that correct?
You were part of the original the original committee too, Gary, with me.
Okay, because when I received this, I was trying to backtrack and get some clarity at where this came from. Also trying to try to figure out what does this type of survey have to do with what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, I really can't connect the two. I mean, you're asking general questions. You're opening up a can of worms. You're giving the ability for folks to air their dirty laundry. I don't think it's fair that this survey is sent out in the content that it is.
So just to clarify, like Sherry said, this committee's job is not to debate whether we should or should not have a survey. That was done by the police reform panel, which I believe, Gary, you were on.
Yes.
It is on page 31, and it says that we will create a community survey to measure overall satisfaction of Columbia County law enforcement and people's interaction with them. This committee's job is to create the survey. And so the conversation for today is, what should the survey ask? How should it ask it? As far as should we have a survey or not, the Board of Supervisors and the other police agencies all signed on to the police reform plan, which said that we are going to create a community survey. It's on page 31 of the plan. So today's conversation is focused on what should that survey ask, how should it ask it, and that's the draft that's in front of you.
Okay.
Also, if you go back to the general guidelines that were handed down by the state, that was one of the suggestions or requirements, is to have community outreach and work with the community on their opinions about police.
And community interactions.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, just briefly, I came up with the first couple of questions kind of out of my head just because I thought they were relevant. And then I went online and checked for other similar surveys. And so the questions are the sort of things that have been asked by a number of police departments around the country, and lots and lots I found. And they were actually able to sort of, compile, tabulate the answers and sort of generate that for public consumption. So I don't see it as a particularly scary thing. I don't know how amazingly useful it'll be, but as the others have said, it is required of us. And, I don't think there's, I think it was pretty simple to do. It should be pretty simple to answer. I don't think it'll be burdensome for the people filling it out or for the people compiling the information. I don't think it's so much about people airing dirty laundry. I know if I were to fill this out, I'd be very, very positive. The only contact I've had with Sheriff's Department and other departments in the county have been really, really positive. So, I would guess that many people would be answering positively, and then there are maybe some who've had interactions about which they weren't terribly satisfied. So these are not questions that we're coming up with out of the blue. They're out there circulating in many other surveys of the same kind.
GA?
do we have a budget to retain a polling company that can do a scientific survey that would do some good? A survey being sent to the population in general would have absolutely no use, in my opinion, at all, nor would it be, in fact, have any real connection to the overall opinion of the persons in the county. I would respectfully suggest that in order to do that, we would have to retain a polling company that would be able to conduct a scientific survey that would have some meaning.
Sheriff?
Yeah, I echo the sentiments of the district attorney. Not only that, I think it should be a third-party polling system as well to make this you know, and don't hope no one takes this offensively, but a non-biased, outreach to the public, so we can just say that this was sent out by a third party. It wasn't sent to any specific area or region of the county, and I think it would just come back as a much fairer and something we can really deduce as what we're looking at here. Again, we're looking to be the most professional office we could be. If we can take some things from this survey to improve the quality of service that we provide, then that'd be great.
So I don't know how this survey was going to be disseminated to the community. Tistria, can you answer that question? Back to Tistria's point, we're looking at the specifics of the survey, not whether we're going to do it or not, but I understand your concerns and the DA's concerns in regards to how we're doing this and who should be doing this. So
Yeah.
do you have those answers, Tistria?
I do. So on page 31, the description, like I read, is create a community survey to measure overall satisfaction of Columbia County law enforcement and people's interaction with them. Under the actual column that talks about how to do it,
You're muted, Tistria.
sorry.
Oh.
So still on page 31, it talks about the description, which I read already, a community survey, measure overall satisfaction. Then the next column that talks about the county action, it says the survey would be conducted annually and anonymously in order for residents to feel safe providing feedback to law enforcement without fear of negative consequences. So I think there would be some online push, paper push. We would pick a month in the year that we would put it out there. And then the data would be compiled by the Public Safety Committee of the Board of Supervisors. And so, again, the survey would go out once a year. It would poll whoever wants to take it. And then the Public Safety Committee would kind of do an analysis, compile the data.
Well, that is exactly my point. If it's polling whoever wants to take it rather than a scientific sample, we're going to get a skewed result, which would have no meaning whatsoever.
Are you saying, DA Chaika, that you would choose who could take it or not? Because I think this is a community survey to poll the entire community.
Well, polling doesn't work that way. Gallup.
I would think it would be more biased if you selected, like, we're going to select everyone that likes how, the groups are running.
Well, respectfully, that's not how polling works.
So is there a different, this talks about a survey, not a poll. I mean, I've put out surveys to my community multiple times. We did a survey on how we should spend the ARPA funds. We did a survey about overall satisfaction with things, and we put it out there and we advertise it in every way we can possibly advertise it. And we get a lot of respondents. And although some might be in favor, some might be opposed, there's usually a pretty clear, okay, we've got 70% supporting, 30% not supporting. So it doesn't talk about like polling, it talks about survey. I don't know if they're the same thing. We do surveys all the time in the town. And we get great feedback from the community, but.
So I have a question, regardless of what direction we go in, but let's assume you get 20,000 of these back. And you say the Public Safety Committee is going to be disseminating that information. Who's going to sit down with 20,000 surveys and do that? My committee's not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So maybe we should look into, and again, maybe this was thought out. So, all respect to everybody that's been involved, but maybe we should look into, getting it to everyone, but that an outside agency sort of puts this out, and then gives us the information, compiles the information that then we could review. But to realistically think that we're going to sit down and go through page by page is unrealistic.
So I'm
Practice.
totally open to hiring a professional, but there are platforms that we've used in the town. They're usually free, like SurveyMonkey or Google, and it compiles the data for you. For us, when we would get paper surveys in, because not everyone in our town does online, we had a staff member. I think we got a survey that had 320 results, and 20 of them were on paper, and we just had a staff member go in and enter those. So that it was all then in the computer system, and it gives you graphs, it gives you charts, it kind of does all that compilation, and it's usually free. That said, I am not opposed to hiring a professional company if that's the direction this
Well, the
committee.
only concern I have is there's 60,000 people in the county. So we're not talking about a small town that has 1,600 people, or, the reality of it is I don't know what the percentages are. There's probably an average of how many people would actually do this. But even if you had 10,000 or 8,000, it's a lot of documents. So I think, as you said, whether we use one of these other online agencies, we have to definitely look into something to that effect.
Well, the number of responses will not dictate the accuracy of the poll or the survey. I think the history of polling would indicate as much.
So if I may,
It may be necessary only to survey or poll 400 people, and to get which may very well reveal an accurate reflection of the entire county's opinions with respect to these questions. But asking everyone without regard to any particular given sample through scientific polling would come up, I know it will come up, I guarantee it will come up with an inaccurate result. For example, people who have a particular bias for or against the sheriff or any particular deputy or police officer will have an opinion that will be reflected inappropriately in a survey in which there is no scientific determination or scientific sampling. It may be necessary to only poll 400 people, but if the poll or the survey is sent out to everyone, the only people that will be responding are people that have some bias that leads them to provide an answer, whether it's for or against the sheriff or any police department. That is the history of polling. That's the fact.
So if I may,
So I would question whether or not this would serve any purpose whatsoever without some kind of scientific polling organization.
Bill?
so if I may, there was actually quite a bit of conversation around this, and the first part was the chopping of trees, and so we had discussions, and I really remember this. We had discussions around pushing towards these online surveys like SurveyMonkey, like Supervisor Holton mentioned. As far as a survey, there's a huge difference between a survey and a poll. We never had a discussion about a poll, because in polling you're trying to pull numbers on who's winning or who's ahead. That's not the goal of this, right? There's surveys, and this is why companies like SurveyMonkey are really popular, because community organizations, governments, they do surveys to judge a community's, to see if they want something different, or if they like the playground, or their surveys are done all the time. And it really is an informative. It is not to be scientific. We're not trying to get down to a solution here. The survey is, just to be informative, to let, whatever agency or whatever government is giving the survey. And a lot of times it's really to inform the public that something is even going on. This is not a poll, though. This is not a poll. It is not to be scientific. It is not. That it's a totally different, separate thing.
Respectfully, if it's not scientific, what good is it? If it's not
What-
an accurate
I-
reflection, if it's not an accurate reflection of the county, why are we doing it?
So, Mr. DA, or again, all due respect, the scientific, when we're doing polling, right? A lot of people know what polling is. I mean, we know that, and it comes a lot of times with a negative connotation because it means we're picking a side. This is not to pick a side. You do surveys. I'll give you, for example, we did a survey in the city of Hudson when the cement plant wanted to come to Hudson. It is to get a good idea of what people thought. It wasn't a poll of whether we should have the cement plant or not. It wasn't that at all. So, again, surveys are done all the time. All the communities, a lot of these communities have done surveys. Hey, we're going to put a new playground over here. What do you, the people, think? It's a lot of time informative is what it is. It is not to go out there and scientifically pick out, so we can make people choose sides. We don't want to do that. We're trying to move away from that.
Gary?
So it's been agreed upon that this survey is something that we need to do. I think you said the Board of Supervisors had indicated to do this. Can some of the concentration from this point on be about simplifying this survey? Open questions like, how safe do you feel in your community? I don't understand the question. I mean, if, 10,000 people come back and say we don't feel safe, the sheriff's department is in no position to do something about that. He's not going to put 10 more deputies on. He doesn't even know where he's going to put them. Like, what is the purpose of that type of question at what we're trying to achieve? It's too open. I'm good with the survey having to go out, but I think we ought to simplify it and not make it as open as it is for interpretation.
Well, then I think that goes back to Tistria's point of let's go through each question and dissect the questions to make sure that the committee's okay with the questions. How we decide to put this out to the community will have to be figured out later on. Dave? Dave, you're muted.
I just wanted to say that I added that after seeing other police surveys from around the country, and it wasn't my first thought as well. So I added it on there for the group's consideration. Similarly, how visible is law enforcement in your area? So I'm not personally wedded to any of these. I just figured, let me put as many on there that I've seen other cities and jurisdictions do, and we'll talk about them.
So Sherry, can you put the questions back up, please? Tistry, are you on?
Sorry, guys, I just had someone come into my office. I
Well, I
apologize.
think the question is at this point is basically, let's go through each question line
Okay.
by line and see if we need to change them, dissect them, and then we'll have to figure out how we will disseminate this to the county later on, whether it's through SurveyMonkey or some other avenue. So
Great.
since you guys wrote this, I think you should take the lead on this.
Okay. So the first question is, have you ever had any experience with anyone from the sheriff, or I'm just going to say police, because you guys know that means sheriff, Philmont, the 4 agencies. Yes or no. And if it's an online version, if they say no, it'll say thank you for taking the survey, because if they haven't had any experience with any of the police departments that we're surveying about, there's no need to go further. On the paper one, we can simply say, if the answer to this question is no, please disregard question 2 through 9. So the first question is, have you actually had an experience to be able to answer the following questions? Questions on that one, or?
May I comment on that?
Sure.
So if the survey is only for persons who have had experience with police, you're automatically limiting the population that will be responding to the rest of the questions. And of those and of that population that will be responding, we'll be talking about persons who have been arrested, persons who have been convicted, persons who have been victims, persons who have been witnesses. Uh, that that is a group, that is a population. The results, the thoughts from which will very much be skewed as opposed to the population in general.
So I'm open to changing that, but I've interacted with the sheriff's office and I've never been arrested or any of those things that you were talking about. I went in for my pistol permit and I had a very great experience with the lady at the desk of the sheriff's office that I would say, yes, I've had an experience and I would rate that experience really well. But the question is, if they say no to that, then how do they answer during that experience? How would you rate the courtesy of that officer? How satisfied were you with the result of that experience? Like the survey is based on, did you have a good experience or not? So if you've never had an experience, I just don't know how you would answer those questions, but I'm open to other opinions there. But I will say I myself have had multiple interactions with the sheriff's department. They've all been very pleasant. I have never been arrested in my life, and I would fill out this survey and answer yes to that question, and then I would rate my overall satisfaction very high. Dave, you had your hand raised.
Yes, and I see the point of that, because people who haven't had any interactions will still have an opinion on how safe they feel in the community, how in overall satisfaction. That might be more from just reading newspapers, so I would hesitate to have have the person who's had no real direct interaction not be able to answer some of the more general questions, but I'm not sure how to solve that.
Well, if you look at question 2, 6, 7, and 8, how much law enforcement presence do you see in your community? How safe do you feel in your community? What is your overall satisfaction? And is there anything you would improve? Those questions could be the first 4. And then question 5 could be, have you had a direct experience? And then if it's no to that, then the other 4 questions really are related to a specific experience. So we could put kind of those more general questions up top and then have the, have you had a direct experience? If they say yes, then they continue on. If they say no, thank you for giving us your input. Bill?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna say, yeah, I agree with that. Is if you say no to the question, then it should have some kind of note and say, okay, skip to question 1 through whatever. And if you answer yes, please go from here, that kind of thing. So that you do get a really mixed opinion, because you're right. Some people who haven't had a real close interaction with law enforcement may still really feel good about how safe they feel in their community because of law enforcement.
So how does
we don't want to do anything to weed out the positives.
Sheriff?
I just want to say that this kind of opens it up, as far as the sheriff's office is concerned, that we have several divisions here. So a person could have been incarcerated and they're going to have contact with the sheriff's office. A person could have been evicted and had contact with the sheriff's office. Some of these, contacts are not on, we're not initiating these contacts. I mean, if we have a civil eviction, we have to, remove someone from their residence. This is not a choice that we have. This is an order from a court order or a legally binding obligation for the sheriff's office. And even though the sheriff or the deputy sheriff that may go to the legal eviction may be the nicest guy or the nicest lady in the world, I'm sure that it's a negative connotation being removed from your house. Same thing with, child protective assists and so on and so forth. So, I would be much more comfortable with the fact that, we broaden this to law enforcement. And if in fact, what agency that you had contact with, please notate that. But the sheriff's office is very different than other agencies. And I'm just concerned about some of the contacts and some of the context that we're going to be getting these answers from.
So we could broaden it to say Columbia County Law Enforcement, because that is what it says in the plan. But my only potential concern is then you will get people talking about the state police, which may be not a horrible thing, but that could also skew the results. If we make it more generic how has your experience been with law enforcement in Columbia County? You are then expanding it to Hudson City Police, you're expanding it to New York State Police, as opposed to really focusing on the 4 police agencies that this plan covers.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. All I can say is that, the data we get from this survey, if this survey is completely necessary and it's going to go into effect, I think we should be able to use that data to make some positive changes. And if I don't know where these issues are arising from, whether it's, in the village of Philmont or town of Greenport or wherever in the county, Copake or whatever, we can't address these things. And I can't get more information from individuals unless I know who they are and I can interview them. Again, the Citizens Review Board is a Citizens Review Board. And if there's concerns, I think they should be something that are actually something we can address and fix. A survey, even though we may identify, well, the individual didn't have his hat on, which isn't a requirement, or whatever the case may be, he was rude to me on a traffic stop, but then we have to determine rude and what the conditions were, and review body cameras to see if that's actually factual. So again, the data that's going to be taken from this, I just think it needs to be helpful and not just data.
So I wonder so the first question before we get into that, because I think that's going to come on the question of, have you had a direct experience? Is the committee comfortable with question 2, which is, how is your overall satisfaction? 6, how safe do you feel in your community? 7, how much law enforcement presence do you see in your community? And 9, is there anything you would improve and or anything you would like us to know, which is going to be a blank space for them to type. Is everyone on this committee comfortable with those 4 questions being up at the top so that each and every person that takes this, whether they've had a direct experience or not, answers those kind of overall satisfaction questions?
I love
Yes.
the generic.
I don't agree with 6 and 7 to even be in the survey, my opinion.
Okay, those are the ones that we found pretty consistently on other surveys. We actually originally had a draft that just Dave had come up with questions, and then Bill and I asked him to go and research other surveys, and that's where 6 through 9 came from, was other surveys similar to this. Gary, why don't you like the questions about law enforcement and feelings?
The reason I don't like those questions is because, once again, the whole idea I thought was to get information that the sheriff's department and the other agencies can do something about. How safe do you feel in your community? If 1,000 people come back and say, I don't feel safe, what are we going to do with that? And the answer is nothing. That's why.
Really?
Yeah, really. What are you going to do, Bill? If 1,000 people come back and said, I don't feel safe, what adjustments, or I should ask the sheriff, what adjustments is he going to do or be able to do with what we're up against with the labor market and everything else and budgets and money? What is he going to do to fix that question or those answers?
So we would say we don't want to ask the question because of the fear of somebody may come back and say that they're unsafe for
No,
1,000 people.
it's not the fear. It's that you're not going to be able to do anything about those answers, in my opinion,
Right,
unless.
but that's conjecture. Okay? We're saying we can't do something about something that hasn't even been asked yet or been put out there. I would rather have the problem in my face and then trying to figure out how to address it than not to know at all.
Okay, so we differ in that opinion.
I think what Gary's saying is that there's not enough information that's going to be, extrapolated from that question to be able to effectively, combat the fact that they don't feel safe. I mean, I don't know where these folks are. I don't know what they don't feel safe about. Is this an issue where they have, domestic issues going on at home? Are they being bullied at school? I don't know. So I'm going to do nothing about it, because what are we going to do? Increase patrols and then throughout the county, and then we're going to be looked at, as what you said before, looking at the budgetary restrictions here at the sheriff's office and where we're spending the money, put more patrols out in the area that may not be needed. I think that, and this is just my personal opinion, I think the Citizens Review Board, if in fact we're going to get this up and going, needs to meet and start getting the information in on what you think you need in order for us to benefit from this, and then worry about this survey later. I mean, this is You know, if we don't get the data from it, it's just useless. We're wasting time, money, and resources.
Is there a reason that this survey has to be so broad?
I don't think there's any requirements, at least set out in the plan, as far as what the survey needs to be.
So why couldn't one of the questions, and maybe I'm missing something because again, I wasn't part of this in the beginning. Why can't one of the questions, instead of saying, you know, we're going to list which departments this includes, which police agencies, why can't it say which agency this individual had an interaction with? A box. Was it with Columbia County Sheriff's Department? Was it with Philmont? Was it with whatever? And then why can't the next question be specifically what department did you have interaction with? Meaning, was it the civil end of the sheriff's department? Was it criminal activity? Was it a eviction proceeding? So we have a little more data that's a little more clear, as opposed to we don't know what department it is. We don't know what the interaction was. And I think it's too broad. You know, I think if we could dial down some of this, and now we're saying, you know, 5,000 of these complaints were actually from Philmont PD, had nothing to do with the sheriff's department. And the ones that we did have an issue with the sheriff's department, but they were all civil in nature. You know, they were involved in an eviction. They were involved in something non-criminal, or it was only traffic stops. So I don't know. This seems to me it's pretty broad, and I think it could be a little more specific to what the issues were. And without making 400 questions, I think we could dial this down quite a bit more. Unless I'm missing something, to me that makes way more sense.
I agree with
No,
you.
I could agree with that, Supervisor. I'm thinking that this, when the conversation came up was a survey, it was that, you know, the we three, meaning and really Dave really did the heavy lifting of this, but we three were going to work on this. But if, you know, the members of the committee want to come together and you know, put in and help do this, that I think Dave and Tisha and myself, certainly, because I'm really busy, would be perfectly fine with that. The goal really was just to put a survey out there to get feedback, not a poll, a survey. But if you're right, if you want to dial this in and you know, have more categories and stuff like that, I'd agree to that.
Yeah, and I think that Dave and Bill and I we took it on as like, we'll come up with a first draft. So that's really what this is. Rob, if you have some ideas to make it stronger, you know, between now and the next meeting, or if another committee wants to take a stab at it. I think for me, what I was looking at was, it says create a community survey to measure overall satisfaction, right? It's not, if I have a specific complaint about an interaction, I'm going to use the citizens review panel and I'm going to make a complaint. I do agree with you that the data of like which police department are, you know, but if I'm talking about my overall satisfaction, I might not be talking about one interaction. I might be talking about my overall, I've interacted with the civil department, I've interacted with this other department, I've interacted with the Philmont PD, and overall, I'm pretty satisfied. Or overall, I think there's areas for improvement, and here they are. So I was looking at it in more of a generic, because it says overall satisfaction. I'm not opposed to it being more specific. But then, you know, so let's just say I had 4 different interactions with 4 different police departments. Would I then go fill the survey out 4 times? Because at the top, I have to check either sheriff or Philmont or this. Would I just go and do it 4 different times? One for each of those interactions?
I think they would just check all the boxes.
That would be my thought.
Yeah, in that instance, I think they would check Philmont, Columbia County Sheriff, and this.
So it would be like, check everyone that you've interacted with.
Yeah. I mean, just, I'm only taking this from this group of what I'm hearing here, you know, in regards to more specific and not as broad, so that we could use this data. Otherwise, again, what's the point of the data? I understand what the consensus, it seems to me, of the committee is, and I'm by no means, I appreciate the work that's gone into this, trust me. So I'm not being, you know, thank you, Dave, Bill, and Tistria for putting the first draft of this out, but it seems that we have to go back at it maybe and add a few more sentences and you know, dial it in just a little bit. Again, you know, we have how many questions here? 9, maybe we need 20. You know, I'm not saying we need 50, but to get a little more data that I think would be more relevant, at least that we could look at this data and say, again, you know, most of these concerns or questions, or even the positives, they're mostly for the sheriff. They're mostly for this department.
Yep.
So
So
Elena,
Rob, I wonder, because we did a really good job, I think, on the citizen review by Yumi and Elena meeting kind of separate from this. And I think for this one, we would bring in the sheriff, maybe the four of us, Yumi, Elena, and the sheriff, have an outside meeting outside of this
Sure.
committee, come up with a second version of the draft,
Yep.
incorporating some of the good stuff in this draft, and then bring it to the next committee meeting.
fine with that. I'm fine with
Sheriff, would
Elena?
you be open to that?
Wherever I can be helpful, Supervisor.
Thank you.
Elena?
Oh, yeah, I see.
Sorry about that. I was muted. Yes, sir.
You had a question, I think, when we were
No,
both
I,
speaking.
I just agreed with what you said, which is I think
Oh.
check all boxes that are applicable. I think that's the cleanest
Okay.
way to do it.
Okay. I will say that back to Tistria's point, Elena, we had talked about a lot of these things, and then you sort of ran with it and you sort of nailed it the last time, before we even met, Tistria and I and yourself, just taking, minutes from this group. You kind of came up with some other great questions and put those forms together before we even met. Would that be something you would take a stab at? Or
Sure.
do you, I
No,
think
I'm
that
happy
would
to
be
do
helpful.
that. I mean, if it's just the four of us meeting, and then you can tell me where I misstepped.
Yeah, I
and I'm
think
happy
that was
to-
the best way to handle this before we all meet. Have you take a stab at it, taking the information from the group. And then we can meet and continue to tweak it.
Okay. I'm happy to do that for everyone.
Great. You all right with that, Tistria?
Yeah, I think, Elena, you can take the first draft and then the feedback that we got here for more specifics and different wording. And then once you have a second draft, then the four of us can get together and go over it. And then we'll bring it back to full committee. Bill and Dave, you had a hand raised, but it went down. Did you have something? to add?
Yeah, this sounds good to me, and I'm not hurt at all if anybody wants to improve it. That was the idea. It was definitely just the first stab.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, and what I want to say is the same thing. And also, just for the context of this, when the survey came up, we were working off of a template that was presented to us in the first committee. I forgot, the police reform review committee. They had a whole template that we went down, and survey was in there, and so we did add it, but we wanted to add of how to go about it. So yeah, I agree with everything we just talked about now.
So I think this is going to take, the next meeting would be the 4th of July week. So I think we should skip that. I think we should really try to get this as close to a good document, especially if we have the sheriff's input on this. We could send it out to the group. Maybe we could do some of this behind the scenes once we get it a little better, so that our August meeting, we can, have a effective meeting and hopefully get it dialed down like we did today with these, all the other documents. That would be my
That's a
suggestion.
good idea. August 1st could be our next meeting. And then Rob, since we do still have 40 minutes, the other agenda item was kind of going through this document one more time. And I do think there's a few follow-ups that need to be done.
Yeah,
and so
let's get those wrapped up. So all we're doing is survey.
And that way, hopefully at the August meeting, we can finalize the survey and any other outstanding steps. Sheriff?
Yeah, just a quick question on going back to the survey, and I know we're going to figure out the wording, but the information that's going to be, collected from the survey, where is that going to go? I mean, is that something that's going to go directly to the governing agency of that particular police agency, or to public safety if it's a sheriff's office? I mean, where does this information go, and who collects it, and who's privy to it?
It's going to go to the Public Safety Committee. I think once that's done, it'll be entered into the minutes, and we'll send a copy to the other police agencies. I think that'll be the end of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So I think we're good on that. And then I am going to be starting back page. We left off at page 31. We just talked about that. So the survey, I think we have a good plan for that. Page 32, the last time we discussed this, I have a note that Jackie will update us in August. The undersheriff is not here and it's not August, but it talks about specialized training, certified instructors in principled policing procedural justice, Zone 14 Academy to roll out additional in-house training, utilizing the 2 newly trained instructors. Do you want to wait till the August meeting, since my notes say that's when Jackie will update us? There must have been some timelines and stuff, Sheriff.
Yeah, she was in here until a few minutes ago. We have an individual come in about some hiring, but I can tell you that we continually strive to get more and better training through the office. Our in-service training had to be pushed back because we're doing a 12-hour shift, testing phase right now. So just the scheduling was a little bit of a challenge. But we do have some new and interesting topics that we're integrating into the training. We still have the Zone 14 Academy going on with 3 individuals in that academy. So, we can update you more as time goes on. And I think August would be a proper time to do that.
Great. And I assume the next item as well, we can do in August, because it talked about implicit bias awareness training for all CCSO officers. And the note from the last time was that it will be included in service in the next couple months. But it seems to tie in with the other piece, kind of talk about overall training and where you're at.
Yes, agreed. We're still doing our virtual training on a regular basis, but we are also instituting in-person training. Some of these trainings are being done virtually now and throughout the year. And they'll also be, backed up with the in-person longer duration of training in that certain topic.
Great, thanks. The next one, my notes from the last meeting, this is talking about use of force and mental health policies. Use of force coming up soon, and Dan Almasi was including the sheriff's office in their training. And one of the questions that came up is whether or not officers were receiving mental health services, and the answer was yes. So I doubt that has changed. Has the use of force policy occurred, or did you need more time on that? And how did the training go with Dan Almasi and mental health for mental health policies?
Well, we've been doing a lot of work with, mental health, with the opioid settlement, funds in the listening talks or listening sessions, excuse me. Everything's going well right now. As you can tell from prior conversation today, we're taking a deep dive in all policies. We started doing that earlier this year, making amendments where they need to be in regards to new legislation and any old policies that may have missed the first time last year. We're taking a deeper dive this year just to integrate anything that we see that needs to be instituted into those policies.
Awesome. Thanks, Sheriff. Page 33, we don't need to cover. That was already done, marked off, and obviously continues on a continuing basis. So we can jump right to page 34. And both of these on page 34, I also have as an August update. So Sheriff, I will include them in that August meeting. One is about warrants, de-escalation, threat assessment. And one is talking again about mental health, Alzheimer's, training for persons with disabilities, the Yellow Dot program. But again, my notes already had that would be an August update, so we can bump both those. And if it's helpful, Sheriff, I can kind of follow up with a summary email to you and Jackie, kind of with the items that we've put on for an update to this committee in August. Does that work for you?
Yes, that'd be extremely helpful. And I just want to add that, some of these things may seem like they're taking a little while, but based on the staffing crisis that we're all facing, the training is difficult to complete in a manner that reaches the whole office in an efficient manner. But we're out there doing it. So
Great. Thank you. And I definitely recognize how difficult it is to run your department with the lack of staffing. And we as the board are having conversations as well as to how to support your efforts there. Page 35. So the Sheriff's Office will continue to review policies and procedures regularly, continue to meet or exceed all standards to remain accredited. continuing the consolidation of 911 to the sheriff for PSAP accreditation and work to obtain accreditation for emergency management. Do you have an update on where the accreditation stands? Do you want to put that also to the August meeting?
All our divisions, other than communications, obviously there's no accreditation thus far for communications division, have been reaccredited. The courthouse, the jail this year are completed. So security services in the jail and law enforcement, I believe, is next year. We're working diligently to get all our paperwork up and running. So we're doing well. As far as C on that, as you all well know, emergency management is no longer under the umbrella of the sheriff's office, much to my dismay. But it is what it is. So 911 and CCSO, I'm not really sure where that stands. I'll talk to Rob. So I don't have an answer on that one right now.
Great, and I can reach out to David Harrison as well to find out for our August meeting about where that accreditation stands. Elena?
I'm sorry to jump out unless there's any questions that you think you need. I need to leave at this point for my next meeting. But I will work to get the work that you've assigned to me out and over to all of you. And it was nice to see everybody.
Thank you, Elena, as always.
Thanks,
you.
Elena.
Everybody. Yep. Bye-bye.
Hey, Rob, do you actually mind reaching out to David Harrison between now and the August meeting and just finding out there's one action plan that talks about obtaining accreditation for emergency management, and since it's no longer under the sheriff?
Not
Great.
Not at all, I mean.
All right, thank you. All right. Thanks, Sheriff, for all your hard work on the accreditation. Next, hiring, recruitment, retention. So there's a lot of different things talked about for recruitment, creating diversity, and survey officers to find out what's drawn them to law enforcement. I think with COVID and just everything that's going on with law enforcement right now, recruitment's been a challenge. And so, we could look at all of these different things, but I personally on this committee would love to hear from the sheriff how we as a committee, how we as a board might help, any ideas that you might have on working on recruitment and expanding recruitment. If you can think of any concrete things that we might be able to support and assist in this area.
Well, I mean, just getting the word out to the community. Obviously, we want an office that mirrors our community. That's very important to me and my staff. We've been very fortunate. I'm going to knock on wood. Call me superstitious, but we should have six law enforcement deputies up and running by September. We've been getting transfers from other agencies. We have an individual who is in the process of coming back to the sheriff's office. He left for whatever reasons we won't get into a few years back, and now looking to come back to the sheriff's office, which we're very happy about and excited. We have an individual next door meeting with the captain and the under sheriff right now from another agency, possibly looking to transfer over to the sheriff's office. So I think we're making a good impression. I think all the hard work is paying off. It's getting out to the other agencies and community in the community here in Columbia County that we are a professional agency and one that people want to work for. Still dealing with some issues with staffing and corrections. I think a lot of that is just issues that can be cleared up with the contract that we're working on currently. So I'm very confident that by next year, we're going to be in a much better place, if not before then.
Can I also add that we've been working, the Human Resources Department has also been working with the Sheriff's Office to try to help them with recruitment. We've been attending job fairs with them. We held a public safety job fair at the facility last month, which was okay. It was our first try. We got some people there, but hopefully the contract will help with recruitment. We do know that other agencies pay more. There's a lot of issues with housing. There's a lot of issues with salary disparages for sure across the counties. So other counties are starting to look at that as well. So we definitely have to collectively, I think, look at that further in terms of recruitment in order to support the sheriff's office.
And if I could just publicly thank Human Resources and Civil Service, I mean, to say we've been a thorn in the side of civil service is to say it mildly. We've been in contact with them continually through the last year and a half. Um, there's a lot of firsts for the sheriff's office, not only for Columbia County Sheriff's Office, but statewide. I think we're really going the distance here and creating a lot of opportunity for sheriff's office throughout New York State here in Columbia County. So, and I also want to thank the board for finding some resources to create a recruitment and retention budget that we've never had before. So that's been very helpful in getting the word out, the literature, and finding some innovative ways to reach out to the public and communities that have not been reached out to in the past. So thank you all.
Yeah, and we've really loved the posters and the recruitment events. We've been getting them all over town here in New Lebanon and on our website, and that's been great. Dave.
I'm glad to hear that we've got some new folks coming in. The 6 folks that you think will be ready in September, how close does that bring you to the full force that you need? Is there still a lot to go after that?
It brings us about halfway there. I mean, we're still going to be short a few.
Okay.
Law enforcement corrections, we're still down, I think, 9.
Okay.
We're still short in communications. But I can say that we've been very successful in getting part-time employees.
Oh, okay.
So that's helping us, reduce the overtime, reduce the burnout rate for our employees here who are working, continuously double shifts.
Yeah.
So it's been a great help. So the part-time employees is definitely doubled, and these are not just employees that are on the books. Um, they're employees that are actually putting in the hours, and they're all doing the same training. They're all reviewing all the policies. I mean, you walk in the door and you're confronted with 500 pieces of literature that you have to go through, and be knowledgeable of. It's not an easy task, but they're willing to put the time in, and these are individuals who have a lot of, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them have a lot of experience in their prior life and prior job history. So we're very fortunate to have these people wanting to be part of the sheriff's office.
Oh, this is really good news. And I just have a quick follow-up question. I don't want to take too much time. Sherry mentioned both salary and housing. I've been working on a housing task force, and I forgot to ask if we've got any public servants serving on that task force. I'm going to find out. But how serious has the housing issue been in terms of recruitment for you? I think it may be, your answer may also reflect public servants serving departments and offices in the whole county, but has it been a deterrent for folks who want to work but can't find a place?
Many of the other agencies, including law enforcement agencies here in Columbia County, don't require you to be a resident of Columbia County, where as we did.
That's
We
great.
are working with civil service in order to combat that, and have people within a geographical area that can take the test outside the county. Obviously, the county residents will have preference, but the cost of living here in Columbia County is pretty high compared to the pay rate. So it is
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
All right, great. We'll keep up the good work there, Sheriff, and of course, let us know if there's anything more we can do to support. Page 36, we had operational policies and procedures, continue to work to meet and exceed standards set forth in OPP1 NYS DCJS Law Enforcement Accreditation LEAP. This seems like just kind of a continuing thing, but do you want to talk about it at all?
Yeah, absolutely. We had the Commission of Corrections here today, just making sure everything is within standards and going smoothly, just to ensure that the work we're doing is sufficient, and we seem to be exceeding most of those standards and meeting the rest. Um, as far as accreditation goes, we work continuously with the Sheriff's Association to make sure that we have the most professional agency that we can possibly have here, and working with other sheriffs to find out what they're doing out there to find to make sure we're integrating new ideas into policing and public safety in general. So yes, we're definitely continuing that and upgrading wherever we can.
Great. We'll mark it as done, of course, on a continuing basis. And then the last thing I have is currently the CCSO utilizes the services of the New York State Police and Albany County EAP to address issues of PTSD, trauma, and other mental health issues. And then there was a develop EAP procedure within the Sheriff's Department. Do you know if an EAP procedure has been developed? Is it something that's currently being worked on?
So yes, I do know we are actually working with a few other counties. The undersheriff could speak better to that. She's been the lead on that, and she's attending meetings with these other counties and making sure that our employee assistance program is there for not only our employees, but if we could be helpful to other agencies as well. We've kind of gotten away a little bit from the New York State Police EAP, and we're working collaboratively with other counties to make sure that our countywide concerns are being addressed for members of our community here in law enforcement and corrections, the same as they're being addressed with other counties to make it more uniform across the board.
Great. I'll just put that on the August update because you said Jackie might have more information to share, so I'll include that in the list I send out. And then the last item was already checked off as done. I did just have a couple from the first few pages that we already reviewed that had a little bit of follow-up. There weren't many. So just a reminder, Sheriff, and you might already have this on your radar, but the quarterly reports to be made to the Public Safety Department, we had decided for this year, we were just going to do one that was January through June instead of quarterly, but that it was going to be presented to Public Safety in July. So just to remind you, because, Public Safety in July is not that far away. And this is your annual report or your quarterly report that talks about data reports on page 28 of the plan.
I believe, and Supervisor Lagoni, correct me if I'm wrong, we've been sending out updates on what we've accomplished more often in this quarterly. I believe one just went out recently on some of the things that the Sheriff's Office has accomplished and checked off some of the boxes that we've talked about today.
Yeah, public safety, you presented one this past month. So yes, we have been sharing it as things have come up.
Okay. And my notes here just say that the January through June was going to be in July, and then we were going to start with an April, July, October, January for the quarterly reports. So the one submitted in April would be the activity through March. The one submitted in July would be activity through June, October, September, January, December. That's just what my notes had said we had agreed to previously. But if they come in more often than that, of course, that's certainly fine. That's done. That's done. The only other follow-up that I see is under community relations. Nope, we already, never mind. That's done. So one of the follow-ups, I had a note that Linda Mussman was going to research, so I can touch base with her, but was the searching for additional solutions for language interpretation. Sorry, I'm on page 31 here, Sherry. I'm jumping all over the place. Searching for additional solutions for language interpretation in addition to language line. And we were going to find out what DSS does and could the Sheriff's Office use DSSs, and Linda Mussman was going to research, so I can check in with her. Do you have any updates on that, Sheriff? I know that Linda offered to research it, so I can check back in with her.
No, I don't. I mean, we have reached out to members of different communities here within Columbia County in order to, get some language training for whoever wants that particular training here. We're not making it mandatory. We're making it on a volunteer basis. We're still working on that based on the staffing crisis and try to get all the training that is required done. That still has not come to fruition. However, I'm very passionate about that to make sure that we have the ability for our employees here to communicate and understand other members of our community whose first language may not be English. Um, as far as other avenues, it's very difficult because, we're looking sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, to contact someone from DSS, and that puts kind of a burden on the DSS employees, getting them out of bed and getting them on the phone or to the scene, and possibly a scene that may not be safe. So we're working on that. We've definitely reached out to other agencies, other sheriff's offices, to see what they're doing. And again, our recruitment status is one that we're trying to mirror our community. So we would love to have individuals from all of our communities here in Columbia County. I talked to some people from Bengali community about maybe seeing if some of their folks would want to come in and interview and find out more about the sheriff's office. And I've been working with the Hispanic community, doing the same thing. So we're really out there every day, beating the streets and trying to be inclusive.
Awesome. And I will follow up with Linda to see if she found anything or not. I'll ask Bob Gibson. I think the question was, do they use any sort of online system in the middle of the night when they get called out? So we can follow up with that in August as well. And that's all I had on the plan. I think we can come back August 1st with a second draft of the survey. And Sheriff, I will email you kind of the updates that we'll be looking for there. And I think other than that, we're in pretty good shape. Before we go to potential public comments on YouTube, anything else from any of the committee members or the DA or anyone else that's here, any of the other supervisors? Dave?
Quick question, and Sheriff, I apologize if it was your predecessor whom we discussed this with, but demographic collection was something we discussed earlier on, and the idea of making it as complete as possible in terms of not only gender, but also race and ethnicity. I belong to a racial group that doesn't really have a category in most surveys, and particularly governmental ones. And I've been working really hard to try and get a category at the local level. But are you, in your demographic collection, whether it be for victims or for perpetrators or wherever you collect, are you able to add a category for Middle East North African folks or Southwest Asian North African folks? I don't know. I think before we talked about a computer program where you could, add categories, but I don't know if that's so.
We're still working with the entity that's doing our new software. Obviously, I think everyone knows that has contact with public safety that we had a slight hiccup, late last year, early this year with the platform we were originally going with. And I think the new platform is much better, and we can definitely add, different ethnicities to that platform. We're working with them, and we have asked that to happen. It's not up and running yet. Hopefully it will be soon. The sheriff's office is a pretty, it's a pretty big endeavor here with some of the, concerns that we have based on the age of the location we're in and the equipment. And, we're dealing with a lot of monetary, I guess, concerns right now just based on equipment. But we're getting all that stuff done in the most timely manner as possible. We just don't want to put it into service before it's ready. So to answer your question, I guess, now that I went into great detail, yes, we can, and yes, we are.
Excellent. Beautiful. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Oswaldo, are there any public comments or questions on the YouTube chat box?
I don't see any.
No, yeah, there's nothing.
Okay. Anything else from anyone on the committee? Thank you all so much for taking almost 2 hours. Hopefully on August 1st, we can do again 10 to 12 and potentially wrap up the work of this committee, which will then put all of the follow-up on to either citizen review or public safety to monitor on an ongoing basis on some of these data reports and other things.
Thank you, everybody. Good meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone. Yeah. See you.
Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Oswaldo, we got everything? Oswald, are you all set?